Have you ever wondered if there's a real connection between matter and something we might call deep consciousness? Or if our ancestors were able to perceive things in the universe that still challenge science today? At the center of your brain, there's a small, almost invisible structure that has sparked debates for centuries, the pineal gland. Many know it as the third eye. And here's the interesting thing. It's not just a spiritual concept. It's also a real structure with clear biological functions. So the question is inevitable. Why did so many ancient civilizations give it so much importance? And what does it have to do with our dreams, our life rhythms, or even with states of consciousness that we still don't fully understand? However, before we continue, I want you to break the automatic pattern right now. Close your eyes, place the tip of your index finger right in the center of your forehead, and breathe. Take a deep breath 3 times. With each exhale, release the tension from just watching. Did you do it? That already took you out of passive mode and connected you with your own pineal gland. Now, so I know that you are really present and not just playing the video comment exactly this phrase. My pineal's waking up. The pineal gland has been regarded for centuries as something that goes far beyond its biological function, as if it were a crossing point between two realities, the visible and the invisible, the material and the subtle, what can be measured and what can only be experienced internally. Across cultures, philosophies, and spiritual traditions, the same concept appears under different names: an inner center of deep perception, a doorway to broader understanding of existence. Even thinkers like René Descartes gave it a special place.
Hacia una comprensión más amplia de la existencia. Incluso, pensadores como René Descartes la situaron en un lugar especial.
Bridge, vision of the human being. Describing it as a possible meeting point between the mind and the body, between the physical and the immaterial. And although modern science does not support those interpretations in metaphysical terms, what's striking is something else. The interest never bridge. As if there were something in this small gland, this small structure, that keeps inviting the question, even when the answers seem incomplete. Because beyond its symbolic significance, the pineal gland is real, tangible, and active within the body. It is located deep within the brain, in a central area between the hemispheres, near the thalamus, a key region in the integration of sensory and motor information. It is tiny, almost insignificant to the naked eye, between 5 and 8 millimeters, weighing around 150 milligrams. And yet its influence extends far beyond its physical size. Its main function is connected to one of the most fundamental rhythms of life, the circadian rhythm. That internal pulse that separates day from night within the body itself. Melatonin, its best-known hormone, acts as a silent regulator of that cycle, detoxifying. When the body should enter rest, when it should recover, and when it should return to a state of alertness. In addition, it also plays an antioxidant role, helping to protect cells from constant internal wear. But in the modern world, an important interference appears: artificial light, especially the light from screens at night, which can deeply disrupt the natural production of melatonin. And with that, it disrupts healthy rest. And this doesn't just affect sleep as something isolated, because affecting sleep means affecting great rest, deep repair. It's the moment when the body reorganizes internal processes, stabilizes systems, and recovers overall balance. And here, another deeper level appears. The pineal gland is also related to serotonin, an essential neurotransmitter in the way we experience internal reality. Mood, memory, learning, even the emotional perception of the world. When serotonin is balanced, the mind feels stable, clear, and coherent. There is a sense of inner order that's hard to explain in words. But when it's disrupted, the experience changes completely. Mental fog appears, anxiety, sadness without an obvious cause, or difficulty maintaining tension. In other words, it not only affects how you sleep, but also how you interpret your own life while you're awake. And when this system gets out of balance, the impact doesn't stay in one place, it spreads. It affects the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you respond to everyday life. Even processes like learning or memory can become slower, more fragile, more unstable. Sleep in turn is also compromised, creating a chain reaction that affects appetite, energy, and the overall balance of the body. It's as if the whole system loses synchronization. And in the midst of this biological complexity, another less known but equally fascinating element appears: the possible involvement of the pineal gland in the production of substances related to deep rest and the regulation of internal pain linked to more intense regeneration states during sleep. That is, it plays a role not only in sleep itself, but also in the actual quality of that rest at very deep levels. And then a question arises that runs through this whole structure. If this small gland is involved in such essential functions for life, why has it been interpreted for centuries as something much more than just a biological organ? René Descartes tried to answer this in his time. For him, the pineal gland was a singular point within the brain, a unique structure, not duplicated. This led him to think that it could have a special role in the integration of conscious experience, a point where the mental and the physical could meet. Today, that interpretation is not accepted by neuroscience in spiritual terms. What's interesting isn't whether it was correct. What's interesting is that this idea didn't disappear. It kept reappearing again and again in different systems of thought, as if something in it kept resonating even more deep within the human imagination. Because in parallel to the scientific approach, different spiritual traditions developed a completely different interpretation. In the case of the pineal gland, it was not just biology, but a symbol. The symbol of the third eye, not as a physical organ with hidden abilities, but as a representation of inner perception. That human ability to observe reality from a deeper level than just the simple one. Record of the senses, the place of intuition, of silent clarity, of understanding that doesn't always need logical explanation to feel true. And in Ojos, point, science and spirituality don't completely contradict each other. They simply describe the same territory using different languages. In ancient Egypt, for example, symbols like the Eye of Horus have been interpreted as representations of inner vision and protection. In the Hindu tradition, this same idea appears in the Ajna chakra, known as the third eye chakra, associated with intuition and deep perception of reality. From this perspective, its activation would not be something physical, but rather a process of internal development through practices such as meditation or introspection. And this is where both narratives intersect without needing to clash, the biological and the symbolic, because in essence, the pineal gland does regulate fundamental processes, those of the body, especially at night when the organism enters phases of rest, repair, and internal reorganization. And it is precisely in that nocturnal silence where many believe the deepest experiences of introspection and subjective perception occur. A territory where science explains the mechanism, but human experience continues to raise questions. As already mentioned, melatonin produced in large quantities by the pineal gland during the night plays a key role in regulating the circadian rhythm, that is, the body's natural sleep-wake cycle. In simple terms, darkness activates its production and light stops it. That's why exposure to artificial light at night can directly affect the quality of your rest. And this is not a minor detail. While you sleep, especially during the deepest phases, your body isn't shut down, it's working. It's about repairing tissues, reorganizing systems, and restoring essential functions to maintain internal balance. Melatonin acts as a kind of coordinator for this whole process, making sure it happens efficiently. In addition, it doesn't just influence sleep, it also has antioxidant properties, which means it helps protect cells from oxidative damage. a factor related to aging and to neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's. It has even been associated with cognitive functions such as memory and learning, which reinforces a simple but powerful idea. Sleeping well is not just rest, it's brain maintenance. When melatonin is affected, the consequences can be wide-ranging: sleep problems, anxiety, depression, and disruptions in the body's overall balance. And here's an interesting point. Many traditions consider nighttime, especially from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., to be when the brain is most affected by melatonin production, receptive to introspection. That's why there are various peculiarities that affect meditation during this interval. Not as an abstract ritual, but as a way to take advantage of a natural state of the nervous system. Techniques such as conscious breathing, visualization, or the use of mantras can induce states of deep calm, reducing stress and promoting the production of melatonin. In that state, the mind enters a different frequency: slower, more stable, more receptive. And this is where the concept of the third eye appears, understood as a metaphor for inner perception and expanded awareness. Some research has even observed that meditation can modify brain activity and increase activation in regions associated with introspection and emotional regulation. In other words, the brain changes when the mind is trained in states of deep attention. And it's not just theory. Many meditation practitioners report greater mental clarity, a sustained sense of calm, and a broader perception of their internal experience. From a practical point of view, one of the most commonly used techniques is to focus attention on the space between the eyebrows, symbolically associated with the third eye. Although it doesn't have a direct anatomical basis, it works as an anchor for concentration. Another common technique is alternate nostril breathing, which helps stabilize the nervous system and improve brain oxygenation, facilitating a state of deep relaxation. And there's one more factor that can't be ignored: light. Natural light, especially at sunrise, is essential for synchronizing the biological clock. It helps regulate melatonin production and keeps the sleep-wake cycle in balance. On the other hand, excessive exposure to artificial light at night, especially blue light from screens, can interfere with this process. That's why reducing screen time before bed, using light filters, or creating darker environments isn't just advice, it's about health. It's a direct way to protect the body's internal balance. In the end, all of this comes down to a simple idea. The way we experience light and darkness affects much more than just our sleep. It influences how we think, how we feel, and how our system works overall. During meditation, there is a point where the experience stops being just mental calm or relaxation, and it starts to become something harder to name. It doesn't always come clearly. It's not always immediate. But when it happens, it manifests as a subtle shift in inner perception. Some people describe it as small bursts of light in the darkness behind closed eyes, or like geometrical shapes that appear and rearrange themselves without any apparent logic, or even as a sensation of infinite depth behind thought. And the most unsettling thing is that it doesn't feel like voluntary imagination. It feels as if something is being perceived from another level of consciousness. In many spiritual traditions, these phenomena have been interpreted as signs associated with the so-called third eye. It's understood as a symbolic center of inner perception that is activated when the mind enters states of deep silence. Not as a literal physical organ with hidden vision, but as a metaphor for a completely different kind of attention, an attention that is not directed outward, but inward. And in that internal movement, something changes radically. The mind stops functioning solely as a generator of constant thoughts, and it begins to behave like an open space, a space where thoughts appear but do not dominate, where sensations arise but do not carry you away. And in that space, something key emerges, a form of clarity that does not depend on reasoning. It's not logic, it's not analysis, it's immediate understanding, as if certain answers don't need to be constructed but simply recognized. In that state, many people report an expanded perception of time. Minutes lose their structure. The sense of sequence weakens. Everything seems more simultaneous, more present. And along with that, an even deeper phenomenon appears: the partial dissolution of the boundaries of the self. Identity doesn't disappear, but it stops feeling rigid. It stops feeling like a separate entity observing the world from the outside. And it starts to feel like part of the same field of experience. This is where many spiritual traditions describe the beginning of a process of expanding consciousness, not as a one-time mystical experience, but as a progressive readjustment of the way the mind interprets reality. Because what changes is not the world, but the structure from which the world is observed. And when that structure becomes more flexible, everything else does too. Automatic reactions lose intensity. Repetitive emotional patterns begin to be seen from a distance. The internal narratives that once seemed absolute begin to lose authority. It's as if the mind, for a moment, stops identifying completely with its own contents. And that small shift changes everything. Because at that moment, a crucial distinction appears. You're no longer just the thought, you're also the space where the thought occurs. In some contemplative traditions, this point is considered the real beginning of deep self-knowledge. Not because external answers are discovered, but because you begin to recognize the internal mechanism of experience. And from there, perception becomes finer, quieter, more stable. Some describe it as a sense of effortless presence, others as an awareness without direction, others as a stillness that doesn't depend on anything external. And at the same time, internal sensory phenomena can intensify. Lights, pulsations, patterns, or sensations of expansion inside the skull. What's important isn't the phenomenon itself. It's what it represents within the subjective experience, a change in how you perceive, as if the attention system started to reorganize itself. And this is where the spiritual narrative comes in more strongly. Because for centuries, these experiences have been interpreted as signs of the opening of the third eye, symbolically associated with intuition, inner vision, and a deep understanding of reality. Not as seeing something new, but as stopping to see from a single fixed perspective. In that sense, awakening is not a spectacular effect. It's an accumulation of internal micro-changes. Moments when the mind stops reacting automatically and starts to observe. When the urge to interpret everything weakens. Where inner silence becomes more relevant than mental noise. And little by little, that new way of perceiving starts to extend outside of meditation, into everyday life, into simple decisions, in the way you respond to stimuli. And here a crucial point appears. Many of these transformations are not linear. They don't progress consistently. They are more like waves of clarity and confusion, of expansion and contraction, of deep perception and a return to the familiar, as if consciousness were learning to sustain new levels of experience without breaking its balance, structure. And in the midst of all this, it turns out that the question of that phase of the whole arises. What exactly is changing? And which part of us is the one observing that change? Because if perception can be modified so deeply, then the reality we experience is not something fixed. It's something that is built in real time, through the consciousness that observes it. And that's where this topic stops being just spiritual or scientific, and it becomes much more intimate. A direct exploration of the way experience itself exists, moment to moment, without filters, without distance, without a clear separation between the one who sees and what is seen.